Welcome to the lecture on obsessive compulsive disorder. It's become quite common now for people to say that they're a bit OCD about something. And what they mean is that they like things a certain way, and they don't like it if it's different. This isn't really obsessive compulsive disorder in a clinical sense. OCD is a condition that becomes disruptive to a person's enjoyment of life, and can be quite debilitating in some cases. It's far more than being a bit particular about certain things. OCD is comprised of two elements: obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviours. Obsessions are intrusive, unwanted, and upsetting thoughts that appear in a person's mind repeatedly. The thoughts are often horrifying in some way, or morally disturbing. For example, they could be about harming one's children, or carrying out some other harmful act against others. For religious people, obsessions might take the form of repeated thoughts that their God does not exist. Or obsessions could be about a terrible event happening, such as your house burning down, or a plane crashing. These obsessions have to be ignored, or suppressed by the individual. They don't want to think these things, and they have to make efforts to neutralise them in some way. Attempting to neutralise the obsession, to stop something bad happening, is how a compulsion develops. And a compulsion is an action that someone feels that, if performed correctly, it will prevent the bad event happening. Compulsive behaviours adhere to strict rules, and it is often the case that if a person thinks they have done it wrong, they must start again. For example, a person who has an obsession that they have germs on their hands that may lead to them contracting an illness may develop a compulsion to wash their hands in a certain ritualised way. If they don't get it just right, then they will need to start from the beginning. Whilst washing your hands seems fairly innocuous, the repetition of this can lead to skin damage. Furthermore, a person may become so caught up in their ritual that they are unable to move on to what they need to do next. Imagine needing to take your children to school, but being unable to because you haven't gotten the hand washing routine just right. It may seem amusing to some outside observers, but it's actually easy to see how OCD can easily become a dominating force in a person's life. The person performing the compulsive act might actually agree that it's unnecessary, but the action is purposeful and appears to help them. But every time the action is performed and the terrible event of the obsession doesn't occur, the individual has a reason to think that performing the compulsive action actually worked. So they keep doing it and become trapped in a vicious cycle. It is possible to have an obsession but no compulsion though. One particularly alarming example is the obsessive thought some people have that they could be a paedophile. This intrusive, unwanted and incorrect thought is extremely damaging, particularly if that person has young children. Although they might not perform a compulsion to negate this obsession, they may avoid their own children and be unable to provide a reason to their partner. After all, how could you explain this to a loved one without causing them understandable anguish, both for their children and themselves? So to reiterate, OCD is far more severe than we express in our everyday use of the term. It's not that we have to stop using OCD in the everyday sense, but you should be mindful that being diagnosed with OCD is more than being picky or fastidious. Okay, that's it for this lecture. I'll see you in the next.